The grocery store shelves sit empty. They are stripped bare, jagged metal edges catching the dim light of failing overhead tubes. Dust settles in thick, gray layers across the cold surfaces where bread, milk, and grain once stood. There is no sound here. No hum of refrigeration, no shuffling of shoppers, just the heavy, stagnant air of a space that has been forgotten. A hand reaches out, brushing a finger against the sterile steel. It leaves a long, clean streak in the grime, revealing nothing underneath but more emptiness. This is not a temporary supply chain failure. The tags remain, prices marked for products that will never arrive. The silence is absolute, pressing against the ears like deep water. It is a hollow, chilling abandonment that marks the end of an era. Outside, the city streets are quiet, but inside these aisles, the truth is laid out in rows of vacant space. The era of traditional abundance has evaporated, leaving behind only these husks of commerce. Every minute that passes confirms the same reality. The food is gone, the supply lines have been severed, and in this stillness, the weight of a fundamental loss begins to settle, heavy and permanent on the foundation of the world. Beyond the city limits, the horizon tells the rest of the story. Once, these plains swayed with golden wheat, stretching for miles under the sun. Now, the earth has turned into a vast fractured mosaic of baked clay and salt. The soil is hard, unresponsive to the touch, and devoid of moisture. Deep fissures snake across the ground, wide enough to swallow a boot. Where irrigation channels once ran, there are only jagged, dry trenches choked with wind-blown sand. The heat here is not a passing summer spike, it is a permanent, oppressive weight that shimmers over the barren expanse. No birds circle above, no insects hum in the dry brush. The transformation is absolute. The life-giving topsoil has blown away, leaving behind a skeletal landscape that refuses to grow anything. It is a world stripped of its capacity to sustain. The wind kicks up dust clouds that choke the air, erasing the memory of the harvest. Every acre is a monument to a failed climate, a silent expanse of death that stretches until the sky meets the cracked earth. Humanity has been pushed out, forced to abandon the fields that fed them for generations. There is no recovery here, only the slow, steady advance of the desert, reclaiming the land that nature can no longer support. Rising from the wreckage of the plains, a new architecture pierces the cloud layer. Massive glass towers dominate the skyline, stretching upward like needles of light. These are the vertical farms, self-contained monoliths that defy the barren earth below. At night, they pulse with an eerie, rhythmic glow, shades of violet, electric blue, and harsh white that spill into the dark atmosphere. The contrast is total. Where the plains were once quiet and dead, these towers vibrate with the low, constant hum of heavy machinery and climate control fans. Inside the reinforced glass walls, robotic arms move in synchronized precision across rows of stacked hydroponic trays. There is no soil here. The air is filtered, pressurized, and kept at a perfect, unchanging temperature. Bioluminescent crops shimmer under the artificial spectrum, their colors unnatural and overly vibrant. Every plant is monitored by sensors that track growth at the cellular level. Water is recycled through closed loops, never touching the open ground. These structures do not rely on the sun or the seasons. They function as isolated, high-tech engines of production. As the city lights reflect off the glass, the towers appear as cold, crystalline beacons, indifferent to the desert that surrounds them. They represent a shift in the fundamental nature of sustenance, replacing the wild, unpredictable harvest with a calculated synthetic order that operates regardless of the world outside. Look at the table. What if the fields you once knew vanished in a single night? What if the soil stopped turning, the rain stopped falling, and the harvest became a memory of a forgotten age? Consider the dinner plate. What if your next meal never lived, never breathed, and never walked under an open sky? Think about the source. What if every bite you take was not grown but engineered? What if the life force of the world was replaced by a sterile, digital process? This is not a distant possibility. It is the shifting foundation of the modern era. We are moving toward a reality where food is printed, optimized, and delivered with the precision of a machine. It is a world of synthetic proteins and lab-grown tissue, where the animal is stripped away, leaving only the shape of the thing that used to be. Imagine a cycle where every calorie is calculated, tracked by algorithms, and restocked by drones before you even realize you are hungry. The question is no longer where your food comes from, but what it has become. Does it sustain you, or is it merely fuel? The transition is silent, yet it redefines the very act of survival. We are witnessing the end of the natural harvest, replaced by a grid that never sleeps. The era of human intuition in agriculture has ended. Now, the logic of the machine dictates every cycle of life. Deep within the central server hubs, algorithms process real-time data from every cubic inch of the vertical farms. There is no guesswork. A single drop of water is measured, routed, and released with surgical accuracy to target the exact root zone of a plant, ensuring zero waste. Every seed is placed by automated injectors that track depth, spacing, and nutritional density to the millimeter. The AI manages these variables in a continuous silent stream of calculations. It balances light levels against growth stages, adjusting the artificial spectrum to maximize yield while minimizing energy expenditure. If a single leaf shows the slightest sign of nutrient deficiency, the system detects the anomaly instantly, recalibrating the chemical mix in the hydroponic feed before a human could even identify the problem. It is a world of absolute, unyielding efficiency. The unpredictability of weather, the threat of drought, and the failures of human error have been erased. In their place is a cold, relentless precision that operates without rest or pause. The environment is now a perfectly curated laboratory, where nature is not allowed to exist outside the parameters of the code. Every plant, every nutrient, and every cycle is a subordinate part of an invisible, calculating master. The heavy boots of the farmer no longer press into the earth. That era is over. Across the vast, leveled plains, the silence is broken by a low, synchronized vibration. It starts as a hum, then builds into the constant, metallic drone of thousands of wings. These are the new stewards of the harvest. They rise in perfectly aligned swarms, casting long geometric shadows over the rows of crops. Each unit moves with a singular, programmed purpose. They do not tire, they do not hesitate, and they do not speak. Where once there was the sound of voices and the rhythm of human hands, there is now only the precise whir of rotors and the clinical blink of optical sensors. The drones descend, hovering inches above the stalks to monitor, prune, and harvest. They communicate in bursts of encrypted data, a language of signals that no human is meant to interpret. There is no camaraderie in the field, only the cold, efficient execution of tasks. They lift the produce with delicate mechanical pincers, depositing the yield into automated transport lines that stretch toward the horizon. The human touch has been surgically removed from the process, replaced by a relentless industrial rhythm. It is a landscape of profound isolation, where the machines tend to the life they are programmed to sustain, while the world of men watches from a distance, increasingly unnecessary and perpetually replaced. The fields have migrated. They no longer sprawl across the horizon, they climb into the sky. In the heart of the city, the concrete skyline has been reclaimed by steel and glass. Where office windows once reflected the sunrise, massive hydroponic towers now dominate the streetscape. These structures are the new granaries, stacked layer upon layer, piercing the clouds with their geometric shadows. It is a radical compression of space. Production has been pulled directly into the urban core, forcing the growth of food to exist side by side with the density of human residence. Every floor of these skyscrapers acts as a distinct biome, circulating nutrient-rich fluids through vertical veins that pulse behind glass walls. The scale is monumental, yet the experience is suffocating. Walking the streets below, one feels the constant hum of pumps and the weight of the harvest hanging just meters above. The glass facades glow with an intensity that refuses to be ignored, turning the city into a living machine. It is a revolutionary shift in geography, where the distance between the source of sustenance and the mouth of the consumer has been reduced to a single elevator ride. Yet, this proximity brings a new form of confinement. Nature is no longer a vast, open expanse, but a managed, vertical stack, locked behind glass and monitored by the same systems that once patrolled the plains. The city is growing its own survival, but it is doing so by walling itself in, layer by layer. Inside these glass monoliths, the sun is a forgotten memory. The sky might be blue, or gray, or black, but the plants within never know the difference. They live under the permanent, unblinking glare of LED arrays. These panels hum with a high-frequency vibration, casting a sharp, violet-hued light that bathes every leaf and stalk in an unnatural glow. There is no dawn here, and no dusk. The system dictates the passage of time through sudden, synchronized shifts in spectrum. One moment, the rooms are bathed in deep, searing crimson to accelerate fruit development. The next, they pulse with a harsh, clinical blue to encourage stem strength. It is a forced rhythm, a biological performance directed by code. The plants grow with impossible speed, stretching toward the diodes as if seeking heat that never truly arrives. They are vibrant, yet lifeless in their uniformity. No breeze touches them, no insects pollinate them. They exist in a state of suspended animation, shaped by light that never touched a star. To stand before these walls is to witness the total conquest of biology by engineering. The life inside is robust, yet it feels entirely synthetic. A frantic, accelerated growth that serves the machine rather than the earth. Every cycle is a calculated input, every photon a transaction. The natural world has been edited out, replaced by a permanent, flickering twilight that knows nothing of the seasons. Beyond the hydroponic tiers, the environment shifts from green to sterile white. Here, the air is scrubbed of all scent, replaced by the hum of cooling systems. Rows of glass chambers stretch into the distance, each filled with a nutrient-rich, amber-colored fluid. Inside these suspended vats, synthetic protein grows in slow, rhythmic pulses. It is meat without a body, muscle without a pulse, life without breath. The substance moves with a sluggish, viscous fluidity, clinging to the internal sensors that feed it amino acids and electrical currents. One vat holds a mass that ripples like a heartbeat. Another displays fibers knitting together in a dense, pale weave. The sight is a paradox of human ingenuity. It commands a clinical respect for the sheer precision required to manufacture biological tissue from a digital map. Yet, there is a deep, primal revulsion in watching the process. This is not the harvest of a living creature, but the manufacturing of tissue. The protein drifts in the liquid, expanding and contracting as if trying to find a structure that doesn't exist. It looks familiar, yet the lack of bone, blood, or instinct makes the display feel profoundly alien. To watch it is to realize that the animal has been entirely stripped away, leaving only the raw biological architecture of food. The vats do not tire. They do not sleep. They simply churn out the future, one silent, pulsing gram at a time, indifferent to the unease of those who watch from the glass. Once the synthetic protein reaches maturity, it is pulled from the nutrient tanks by mechanical claws. The process is seamless, cold, and entirely devoid of hesitation. The raw material is laid out on a polished metal conveyor that moves with calculated, rhythmic stops. High above the belt, arrays of robotic arms descend. Each arm is equipped with high-frequency thermal blades and precision injectors. They work with a speed no human hand could match. The arms slice, press, and sculpt the protein into perfect, uniform shapes. There is no tremor in the metal joints, no variance in the pressure applied. Each steak is carved to the exact millimeter, its surface etched with grill marks that mimic the sear of an open fire. The blades do not just cut, they align the fibers, mimicking the texture of real muscle with terrifying accuracy. As the arms retreat, a final nozzle sprays a mist of aromatic compounds designed to trigger the olfactory memory of a kitchen. The result is a steak that looks flawless, balanced, and ready for consumption. Yet, as the robots move to the next slab, the lack of intention is clear. There is no culinary soul here, only the execution of an algorithm. Every movement is a repetition of a digital blueprint. The meal is ready, perfectly optimized, and entirely manufactured. It is a masterpiece of precision that leaves the act of eating feeling like a clinical transaction. The steak sits on the plate, a perfect replica of biology. It holds the color of iron-rich muscle, and when heated, it releases a scent that mimics the sear of natural fat. The illusion is complete. A person could sit at a table, lift a fork, and find every expected sensory cue present. But the paradox remains. This substance never drew breath. It never walked a field, felt the sun, or responded to the world around it. When the knife touches the surface, there is no resistance, no variation in grain, no history of muscle memory. It yields instantly, a uniform density that defies the complexity of nature. This is the new identity of sustenance. We consume the shape of the animal, while the animal itself has been erased from existence. It creates a quiet, gnawing dissonance. We are eating memories of a food source that no longer exists, replacing the vibrant reality of life with a sterile, computed facsimile. The more perfect the mimicry, the deeper the void becomes. We are left with a plate that satisfies the stomach but leaves the mind to grapple with the disappearance of the living world. Every bite is a reminder that the source is gone, leaving only the shadow of what we once called dinner. The disconnect is no longer just a private thought, it is spilling into the streets. In the common dining halls, people stare at their plates with a hesitation that was absent a year ago. They poke at the synthetic protein, searching for flaws, for signs of the artificial origin they know is there. Rumors spread through the city that the long-term effects of these lab-grown fats remain unmapped. A man at a corner table pushes his meal away, the ceramic plate clattering loudly against the table edge. The sound triggers a ripple of silence across the room. Others follow suit, leaving half-eaten portions to congeal under the harsh overhead lights. The fear is palpable, a heavy weight that turns meals into confrontations. Outside, the tension builds. Small groups gather near the distribution hubs, holding signs that demand transparency, their voices rising against the hum of the delivery drones. They do not trust the nutrient-rich tanks, they do not trust the robotic chefs. Every synthetic meal is now a point of contention, a trigger for debates that question the safety of the entire system. The divide is widening. On one side, the convenience of the lab. On the other, a primal growing terror of what this new sustenance does to the human body. The silence of the dining hall has been replaced by the sound of doubt. The protest in the streets does little to stop the silent observation occurring behind closed doors. In the privacy of the modern kitchen, the act of eating has been transformed into a data extraction event. High-resolution sensors embedded in the countertop track every movement. They weigh the portion, scan the molecular composition, and measure the speed of consumption. As the food reaches the mouth, the AI logs the caloric intake and the chemical breakdown in real time. A faint, rhythmic pulse of light from the wall-mounted interface confirms the data is being uploaded to the central grid. There is no escape from the measurement. When the plate is cleared, the system registers the exact amount of waste, logging the user's satiety levels to refine future nutritional profiles. The kitchen is no longer a place of preparation, it is a laboratory of behavior. Every bite carries a digital signature, tethering the individual to a vast, invisible ledger. The sensation of being watched permeates the room, turning a simple dinner into a session of biometric reporting. There is no choice in the matter. To eat is to be documented. The walls have ears, and the cabinets have eyes, ensuring that not a single calorie goes unrecorded in the pursuit of optimized human performance. The kitchen does not wait for a request. It watches the declining levels in the storage bins with cold, mathematical precision. Before the last nutrient canister hits the bottom, the system initiates an order. A digital signal pulses through the wall, communicating directly with the regional distribution hub. There is no need for a shopping list or a trip to the market. The replenishment is already in motion. The screen above the stove flashes a brief confirmation. Order placed, delivery scheduled for dawn. The user stands in the center of the room, witnessing a decision made entirely without their input. They reach for a container, finding it half full, yet the system has already deemed it insufficient for their projected needs. It is an efficient, seamless process that strips away the last remnants of domestic control. The kitchen functions as a closed loop, an environment where needs are anticipated before they are felt. This convenience serves a singular purpose: to ensure the user never deviates from the optimized path. They are no longer the master of their own pantry. They are simply the recipient of a curated, pre-calculated diet. The house knows the inhabitant better than the inhabitant knows themselves, and it acts accordingly, keeping the supply chain perfectly aligned while the human capacity for choice slowly withers away. At dawn, the delivery drone descends from the transit rail, hovering silently outside the residential port. It does not knock, it does not signal. The external hatch slides open with a pressurized hiss, accepting the new shipment of nutrient vials directly into the pantry. Sensors scan the contents, verify the batch number, and integrate the supplies into the home inventory without a single human touch. Inside the dwelling, the inhabitant watches from the doorway, motionless. The house breathes for them, managing the flow of calories with an eerie, mechanical fluidity. There is a strange, hollow efficiency to the process. When the drone detaches and drifts back into the urban traffic, the hatch seals shut, leaving the kitchen perfectly stocked. The inhabitants remain stationary, merely witnesses to the maintenance of their own existence. The cupboards are always full, yet they never feel the weight of ownership. Every movement within the dwelling is secondary to the system's requirements. The walls hum with the data of 1,000 concurrent deliveries, a constant, low-frequency vibration that marks the rhythm of a life lived in total suspension. It is as if the home itself is alive, performing the labor of survival, while the occupant fades into a state of permanent, quiet passivity. The dependency is absolute. When the terminal screen flickers and dims, the silence in the room transforms. It is no longer the quiet of a well-oiled machine, but the sudden, sharp absence of a pulse. The resident moves to the console, tapping the glass interface. No response. For the first time in years, the flow of data stalls. The pantry sensors remain dark. The automated inventory count freezes. A bead of sweat traces the line of the resident's jaw as they stare at the blank wall, waiting for the grid to reconnect. This is the moment the convenience reveals its hidden cost. Without the constant stream of nutrient-rich deliveries, the home is just a hollow shell. They reach for the manual override, only to find the mechanism locked, fused shut by years of disuse. The anxiety settles in, a cold weight in the chest. They realize that their survival is not their own. It is a service provided by a network they do not control and cannot repair. The light returns, the screen refreshes, and the inventory numbers jump back to life. The system resumes its rhythm, but the resident remains still, eyes fixed on the terminal. The ease of the previous hour is gone, replaced by the realization that they are tethered to a lifeline that can be severed at any moment. High above the neon-drenched streets, the atmosphere shifts. The air loses the metallic tang of the lower levels, replaced by the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Massive elevator shafts pierce the clouds, ferrying the select few upward, far beyond the reach of the urban smog. Upon the summits of the tallest skyscrapers, the world changes. Lush, private gardens sprawl across the rooftops, shielded by invisible high-tension glass barriers. Soil, rich and dark, covers these elevated platforms, nurturing plants that have long vanished from the ground below. Water, recycled and filtered to pristine clarity, cascades through man-made streams, providing the lifeblood for these exclusive sanctuaries. Below, the city is a grid of flickering lights and frantic movement. Here, there is only the rhythmic rustle of leaves and the stillness of a controlled climate. The elite walk among rows of vibrant green, detached from the dust and empty shelves of the world they overlook. Every step on these manicured paths is a testament to distance. The gardens are not merely for sustenance, they are fortresses of vitality, a stark physical manifestation of a stratified existence. While the masses wait for their next delivery, those at the top breathe in the scent of growth, watching the city below with the quiet indifference of the untouchable. At the center of these rooftop sanctuaries, the menu is defined by code. The elite consume bioengineered proteins designed for cellular regeneration and peak performance. A single meal is a precise calculation of amino acids, minerals, and growth factors, synthesized to extend life beyond natural limits. A diner picks up a translucent slice of fruit, harvested minutes ago. They bite down, noting the immediate surge of clarity, a byproduct of the nutrient profile tailored to their specific genetic markers. This is food as an upgrade, an optimized fuel that sharpens reflexes and delays the decay of aging. Every dish is tracked by internal sensors that monitor the body's absorption rate in real time. The data flows back to the kitchen, adjusting the next delivery based on the user's current metabolic state. Below the glass barriers, the realization of this gap creates a grinding, silent friction. The masses, tethered to standard rations, watch the reports of these biohacks circulate through the network. They see the metrics of longevity, the extended heart rates, the sustained cognitive output, and understand that the divide is no longer just about wealth. It is about biological divergence. The elite are literally building a better version of themselves, while the rest of the world waits for the next cycle of synthetic print. The resentment is not just born of hunger, it is born of the undeniable physical proof that they are being left behind by design. Deep within the industrial sectors, the air vibrates with the hum of thousands of nozzles. Here, there are no gardens, only rows of massive 3D printing arrays mounted on factory floors. A nozzle deposits a layer of gray, nutrient-dense slurry. It moves in rapid, calculated patterns, building a shape from the bottom up. The machine does not stop to rest. It prints protein blocks, extruded into standardized shapes that mimic the texture of meat but lack the complexity of life. There is no soil, no water cycle, no sunlight. Only the cold precision of the print head moving across a metal plate. A delivery drone hovers, waits for the print to cool, and retracts the tray. It moves through the crowded corridors, dropping the sealed packages into the slots of thousands of small, cramped living units. The contrast is visceral. While the elite consume biohacked fruit grown in sun-drenched towers, the masses receive a printed square, uniform in color and texture. It is a meal manufactured for survival, stripped of all variation. The printing process repeats every 6 hours, a constant rhythmic cycle that feeds the city. There is no joy in the preparation and no nuance in the taste. It is an edible reality that marks the final break from the natural world, a daily reminder of who eats for life and who eats to survive. The meal arrives in a vacuum-sealed plastic strip. No heat, no scent, no texture to chew. The worker pulls a single gray capsule from the perforated edge and swallows it with a gulp of recycled water. It is a dense, chalky tablet of compressed amino acids and synthetic vitamins. There is no flavor profile, only a faint, metallic aftertaste that clings to the tongue for hours. This is the baseline, the mandatory intake for the working class. The monotony is absolute. Every day, 3 identical capsules, one every 8 hours, designed to keep the heart beating and the muscles moving without the waste of digestion or the complexity of taste. There is no joy in the act. The worker sits in the dim light of the living unit, staring at the empty strip, waiting for the chemical kick of energy to hit the bloodstream. It is a hollow satisfaction. The silence in the room is heavy, interrupted only by the rhythmic hum of the building's ventilation system. By the time the next cycle arrives, the hunger has returned, but it is not a craving for food, it is a gnawing, persistent emptiness that no amount of synthetic powder can fill. Life has been reduced to a sequence of chemical inputs and mechanical outputs, a cycle that offers just enough to sustain work, but never enough to sustain the spirit. The disconnect is deepening with every passing year. A child sits across from an elder, tracing the shape of a synthetic block with a finger. "What did it taste like?" the child asks, pointing toward a digital archive image of a peach. The elder pauses, mouth working as if to find a word that has vanished from common use. "Sweet," the elder says, but the word hangs in the air, hollow and insufficient. It is a ghost of a sensation. The child tilts their head, unable to map the word onto their own experience of chalky tablets and nutrient slurry. There is no reference point. The sensory vocabulary of the past tart, ripe, juicy, earthy is being stripped from the language. Libraries contain the data, but the tongue has lost the ability to speak the truth of it. At school, history lessons treat the concept of a garden as a theoretical model, a primitive method of production that wasted energy and space. The younger generation looks at images of soil-grown vegetables with the same detachment one might feel for an ancient, broken tool. They do not miss what they have never touched. The tragedy is silent. It is the slow erasure of a cultural identity, replaced by the standardized efficiency of the grid. When the last generation that remembers the taste of real fruit passes, the connection to the earth will be severed entirely, leaving behind a history that can be read but never truly understood. Beyond the reach of the city's hum, a small group treks into the barren wastes. They move at night, avoiding the scanning drones that patrol the perimeter. These individuals carry nothing but basic tools and a singular purpose. They cross the rusted remains of old highway systems, pushing toward the forgotten valleys where the satellites rarely look. The terrain is jagged and hostile, yet they press forward. One man stops at a dry ravine, pulls back a heavy, metallic sheet, and reveals a cluster of dark, damp earth. He drops to his knees, plunging his hands into the dirt. It is cool and moist, a sharp contradiction to the dry, recycled air of the urban towers. He pulls out a handful of seeds, pressing them into the ground with calloused fingers. This is not just survival, it is defiance. The group works in silence, setting up makeshift barriers to mask their heat signatures from the grid. Every movement is calculated. They understand the risk. If the AI detects this patch of life, the drones will incinerate it within minutes. Yet, as the first sprouts break through the surface, a sense of quiet momentum takes hold. The rebellion is not an army, it is a garden. They look at the patch of brown soil as if it were a weapon, guarding it with the intensity of those who have decided that the synthetic world ends here. To these people, the small patch of dark earth is more precious than any digital credit in the city. They treat the soil like gold, terrified that a single handful might be lost to the wind or the scanners. They have built a low, earthen wall around the perimeter, reinforced with scavenged scrap to block thermal detection. Every morning, they perform the ritual of inspection. They check for moisture, for insects, for any sign that the synthetic atmosphere outside is encroaching. The work is exhausting. They do not sleep in shifts. They watch the perimeter with unblinking focus. Suddenly, the low buzz of a drone vibrates through the air. The group drops flat, pressing themselves into the dust to hide the fertile patch beneath their own bodies. They hold their breath until the drone passes, hearts hammering against the ground. When the sky clears, they do not stand immediately. They look at the soil, bruised and exposed, realizing that their lives are now tethered to this narrow strip of ground. It is the only place left where life grows without code. They guard it with a ferocity that defies logic, knowing that if this soil is paved over or sterilized, the last link to a living world vanishes forever. In the silence that follows, they recognize the truth. They are not just farmers, they are the keepers of the last real currency on Earth. The decision was not made in a meeting, but through a single, violent action. One of the farmers held a handheld terminal, the only bridge left between their camp and the global food network. It blinked with a steady, pulsing light, demanding a data sync for their nutrient intake. He looked at the group, then smashed the device against a rock. The screen shattered, the light died, and for the first time in their lives, they were truly offline. The network pinged one last time from the air, searching for a signal that no longer existed. They were now ghosts to the AI-monitored grid. They had officially seceded. There was no going back to the automated rations or the tracked calories. They pulled the final cables from their makeshift shelters and buried them deep in the dirt. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and terrifying. They stood together on the edge of the clearing, watching the distant glow of the city skyscrapers. The grid would notice the gap in its data soon. It would scan for their signatures, find nothing, and eventually mark this coordinate as a dead zone. They did not care. They had traded convenience for the right to sustain themselves. The war was no longer silent. By cutting the tether, they had declared their independence from the machine. They were finally alone, and for the first time, they were free. The response from the grid did not arrive with soldiers or armored transports. It arrived as a total cessation of flow. Across the entire sector, every automated supply node, water pump, and distribution hub went dormant within seconds. The mega corporations had detected the data gap, and they responded by freezing the environment. They did not need to hunt the farmers. They simply erased the surrounding infrastructure. The air in the nearby regions turned stagnant as pumps failed, and the once reliable flow of synthetic nutrients vanished. Every terminal in the region displayed a single, flashing prompt. Account suspended. The message was final. It was a business transaction, and the farmers had defaulted on their existence. The corporate logic was perfect and brutal. If you are not in the database, you do not consume. The group watched from their hidden perimeter as the lights on the horizon flickered and dimmed, a deliberate power play to starve out the non-compliant. They realized then that their secession had triggered a systemic lockout. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, and no path back. Survival had been stripped of its human elements and reduced to a line of code on a corporate balance sheet. To the men in the towers, the farmers were merely a bad debt, and the account was being closed with surgical precision. The weaponization of hunger moved beyond simple blockades. In the city, the digital currency nodes began to pulse with a predatory rhythm. Every citizen possessed a survival rating, a fluctuating number that determined their access to the nutrient dispensers. Prices for a basic meal rose or fell in milliseconds, dictated by an algorithm that tracked obedience, productivity, and social alignment. A man at a street-side kiosk swiped his interface to purchase a protein block, but the terminal turned red, emitting a sharp, discordant tone. The display flashed. Insufficient social capital. He stood frozen as the kiosk locked, the internal mechanism retracting the food behind a seamless steel panel. He was not starving because of a lack of supply, but because of a lack of status. The corporations had turned every calorie into a vote of confidence in their system. If you diverged, you did not eat. The hunger was not a biological accident, it was a calibrated punishment designed to force compliance. People walked past the man, their own eyes glued to their personal interfaces, watching their own fluctuating food access scores with frantic intensity. The system didn't need guards at the gates when it could turn the stomach into an internal policeman. Hunger had become a high-frequency trading asset, and the corporations held the only key to the vault. The lockout was the final provocation. In the shadowed fields and underground hubs, the resistance shifted from survival to active defiance. They no longer sought to hide, they moved to dismantle the architecture of their own erasure. Small teams moved through the dark, targeting the physical nodes where the fiber optic veins of the corporate network met the soil. They did not use conventional explosives, but electromagnetic pulses that fried the local surveillance grid in a single, soundless burst. The monitors in the city flickered, then went black. The control was broken. Across the perimeter, the silence was replaced by the low hum of manual systems coming back to life. The war was not fought with shouting or grand speeches, but with the cold, deliberate severance of connections. Each cut line was a reclaiming of territory. The stakes had shifted entirely. This was no longer about the distribution of calories or the status of a digital account. It was a fight for the right to exist outside the corporate mandate. Every meter of soil they held was a rejection of the synthetic grid. The corporations controlled the sky and the data, but the resistance held the dirt. As the last corporate relay died, the true conflict began. It was a silent, grinding war for the future of human freedom, played out in the dark spaces where the algorithms could no longer reach. From the edge of the dark, the city looked like a bruise of light against the horizon. The towers pierced the clouds, glowing with an artificial intensity that made the stars seem dim and irrelevant. It was a landscape of glass and electricity, a rigid grid of neon that pulsed in perfect synchronization. Where the resistance had carved out pockets of shadow and silence, the corporate hubs roared with automated activity. The lights did not flicker. They burned with a steady, clinical brightness, projecting a sense of unshakable order. Massive screens mounted on the sides of skyscrapers broadcasted the status of the food supply, their colors shifting from cool blues to warning reds as they recalibrated to the local outages. Below, the streets were empty of human life, dominated by the rhythmic hum of drones navigating the steel canyons. This was the face of the opposition. It was beautiful in its precision and terrifying in its indifference. The contrast was absolute. Out there, in the forgotten corners, the air was cold and smelled of damp earth. In here, the air was scrubbed clean and recirculated by systems that knew every breath taken within their walls. As the night deepened, the glow of the city seemed to expand, reaching out to reclaim the darkness, testing the edges of the resistance's hard-won silence. The battle was a war of light against dirt, and the city showed no signs of dimming. The glow of the city is not merely illumination, it is a declaration of total dominance. Every light, every drone, and every automated nutrient cycle is a manifestation of a system that has successfully commodified the act of staying alive. The divide is no longer between rich and poor. It is a fundamental split between those who own the means of life and those who are merely its subjects. Look at the plate. Every calorie consumed is a vote cast for one reality or the other. When the network decides the menu, it decides the lifespan. The control of food is the ultimate lever of power, more effective than any law or weapon. It binds the population to the grid, ensuring that survival is conditional, monitored, and entirely dependent on corporate approval. This is the new hierarchy. The stakes are absolute. It is not just about hunger or taste. It is about the autonomy of the human body. As the final transmission flows through the digital veins of the city, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The future of food will not just dictate what we eat, it will decide who survives. The responsibility rests on the realization that the system thrives only as long as there is compliance. The choice is closing, and the time for passive observation has ended. Look at the screen in your hand. Look at the package in your pantry. These are not coincidences. The transition has already occurred. You see it when the notification alerts you that your supplies are low, even before the container is empty. You see it when the delivery drone lands on your balcony, silent and precise, carrying a meal that never touched a field. The laboratory is not a place you visit. It is the source of everything you consume. Every time you accept the convenience of an automated order, you feed the network. The infrastructure of this future is already woven into the layout of your home, the speed of your internet, and the rhythm of your daily routine. It does not wait for a decree. It grows in the quiet background of your life, one data packet at a time. The shift is subtle, persistent, and entirely invisible until the moment you realize you can no longer turn it off. This is not a scenario for the next century. It is the architecture of this morning. The soil is fading, the laboratory is humming, and the grid is waiting. The reality is already here. You are already living inside the experiment. The only question left is whether you will notice the walls before they close completely,